Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making difference in the workplace and in our communities. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And oh my goodness, here we are. We're in the middle of our HR Southwest Conference speaker series as I get to talk to speakers about some of the topics they'll be sharing at this year's HR Southwest Conference in Fort Worth, Texas at the Fort Worth Convention Center coming up October the 15th through the 18th. And man, I have another special guest today. I'm getting to talk to Ben Utech. Ben, he works for True North Companies. He's the Chief Culture Officer at True North, as well as Behavioral Essentials, and he's an NFL player. He also, most importantly, is a speaker at this year's HR Southwest Conference. Ben, how you doing? It's good to have you on the show, man.
Man, Bruce, I'm doing great. I'm in Minnesota in the summer, which is when you want to be here, as we talked about, right? It's beautiful weather. Yesterday, my daughter and her team won the national championship for the AAU girls volleyball for age 14. And I don't even have words to describe what that was like.
Oh, man.
It was the best Father's Day present you could have ever asked for.
How exciting is that? Yeah, not just to watch her win, but on Father's Day and just to be part of that. Incredible. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I've never been to Minnesota. And I was just sitting there talking to you before we recorded. I was like, man, this is the time of year you probably want to recruit people to Minnesota, right?
Yeah, recruiting is tough during about November to May, right? But it gets a little chilly. But I'll tell you, man, the spring, summer, fall here is gorgeous. So it's awesome.
Well, I'm excited to visit with you today. Of course, we're going to talk about the HR Southwest Conference. You're going to be speaking about about champions, Creed, the blueprint of a Super Bowl culture. And I'm really excited to get into that because I'm a sports guy and I'm really excited about this. Hey, I want to ask you real quick. I mentioned you're an NFL player. For those listening, talk about that for a second. Like, who did you play for and what was that all about?
Homegrown Minnesota kid. And I was just super blessed to make it to a Division I team to play. I played for the University of Minnesota, was a captain there, was an all Big Ten tight end. I went on to play 7 years in the NFL, and my first team was with the Indianapolis Colts. So I got to play for Hall of Fame coach Tony Dungy, Hall of Fame manager Bill Polian, Hall of Fame quarterback Peyton Manning, alongside Hall of Fame receivers Marvin Harrison and Hall of Fame defensive end. We've got, there's just the amount of talent on that team is insurmountable. And so to be on that team, to be one of the few that won a Super Bowl is it's hard to put into words, Bruce, but it was radically special.
Man, that's very exciting. I love that. And I always talk about, when I see people that have success, I look around who they're surrounded by. And that's a common thread. They're all surrounded by great people, great men and women. Yeah. And, I one of the things I also like to do is I like to do a little bit of research ahead of time. And I noticed you did receive an Uncommon Award in 2019. I'm a Tony Dungy fan. I have his book, yeah. Uncommon. So I'm very interested in what was that all about?
Well, listen, this probably was one of the most special awards that I could have been awarded. And Tony Dungy, after writing the book Uncommon, created an award platform, and it's designed to go to an uncommon leader who lives their life in an uncommon way, who's not afraid to go against the flow, who's not afraid to be innovative and creative, and most importantly, place the needs of other people first. So I'll never forget when I got that call, and I honestly, I didn't even cry for the Super Bowl. I was so excited. But when Tony called and said, Ben, I want you to be this year's Uncommon Award winner, I just broke down because I thought to myself, wait a second, my Hall of Fame quarterback, Peyton Manning, just won this last year. It's gone to Dabo Sweeney and Ben Roethlisberger and Kevin Warren this last year, who's now the president of the Chicago Bears. And so I was just blown away. That's what this is right here, Bruce. This is a 90-pound trophy made of iron. And on it are the three most influential leaders in Coach Dungy's life: his father, Cal Stahl, who was the head coach of the Gophers when Tony Dungy was the first African-American quarterback to ever play Division I football, and then Martin Luther King Jr. And so to be surrounded by, leaders like this was speechless. It was a huge honor and something I take very seriously.
I got to tell you, I got chills. And for those listening, I hope you have your pen out, you have your journal out. You're going to take some notes here. And of course, you're going to get to see Ben at this year's HR Southwest conference. And I'm going to put the link in the show notes so you can get registered, get signed up. And he's going to share so much. Hey, Ben, I would love for you. So you talked a little bit about playing for Indianapolis. Share a little bit about your story growing up and how in the world did you get into speaking and consulting and doing some of the leadership you're doing today?
No, I appreciate that question, Bruce, because it is very personal to me. So my dad was a pastor. I was in the Methodist ministry for over 40 years. And I honestly fell in love with speaking, watching him craft a message every week designed to positively impact people's lives. And I thought, man, I have to do that. I have to be able to do what he does as an orator, and the power of rhetoric, and to use words to positively transform people. And so when I chose a communications degree in public speaking, it was for that reason, not because it was the easiest degree that athletes usually do to get through college, but because honestly, in its purest form, watching my dad get up every week in front of 700 people and pouring into their lives and doing whatever he could to use the power of communication to be transformative, that's what started the spark. And so I began speaking professionally in college. And then when I became a part of this special Super Bowl championship team in Indianapolis and began to really experience this radical approach to objective chosen culture, upon retirement, I knew exactly what story I wanted to start telling. And that was the champion's way. That was to bring people into the locker room and onto the sideline and to really create a powerful narrative around how culture not only can transform an organization, right? It not only can impact the bottom line of an organization, but most importantly, it can transform the human condition of every single person who comes in touch with that. And that to me was above all else the most important. And so I began building that program, began speaking about it, and that's really, the beginning of where I'm at today.
I love that, because I think whenever business leaders, HR leaders, we all want to know, like, what does that look like when it comes to great culture? Because we know when we have great culture, good things happen. I'm curious, when you walked into, Minnesota or Indianapolis, when you walked in these locker rooms, could you feel that culture immediately? And what was like, I'm just curious, like, what was that like?
Yeah, you could feel it in Indianapolis, because Indianapolis had made a choice when they hired Tony Dungy that they were going to win a championship. And that's a big goal to put out there, but it's another thing to actually make the choices needed to invest the time and to invest the capital into what it takes to actually create that culture. And Coach Dungy tells a story about when Jim Irsay, the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, had called him about the head coaching job. Upon the offering, Coach Dungy made one request, and the request was, if you want me to be the head coach, you have to give me the keys to the car. You have to hand over control and trust that I'm going to build the right team to bring a world championship to this organization. And Jim Irsay said without hesitation, yes. And because culture is the leader's choice, it has to start at the top. Tony Dungy brought in an objective process by which to do that, and which to scale it across the entire organization. And that ultimately, in my opinion, is what led to creating the best team in the world in 2006 to win a championship. And that's really where it began, Bruce.
Yeah, I remember watching that. I think you played was it the Bears? in the Super Bowl. I do remember that. Hey, write that down. Culture is a leader's choice. I love how you set that up. Hey, let's talk about the HR Southwest conference. Have you? And I'm curious. I mean, you've probably been to Dallas before, playing the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, one of the best, sports communities in the world. It really is. There's so much passion for the game, not just football, but all sports, and
Yeah.
and obviously, just getting involved with my daughter's national volleyball club. At least the top 5 national clubs in volleyball come from Texas. Texas, such an abundance of talented and gifted young men and women. And so when you just look at the community, it is at the top of the pyramid, right? For top sports communities. And so I love my time in Dallas.
I love that. Well, the HR Southwest is coming October the 15th through the 18th. The theme is learn, network, and grow. And I'm curious, Ben, when you hear that theme, learn, network, and grow, like, what does that mean to you?
Well, first of all, every single one of those are pillars to what make an organization successful. First and foremost, right? There are what we call non-negotiables. And non-negotiables are the principles, they're the beliefs and values that we have to make objective. We have to make learning, we have to make networking, we have to make growth, not a subjective, ethereal concept where everybody on the team has a different definition for what that means. We have to actually identify what is learning. Why does learning matter? And how do you actually practice learning and develop learning in yourself and in your team members? And so and that's something that we did in Indianapolis. We had a culture of learning, and it revolved around 3 beliefs. And those beliefs were questions, execution, and evaluation. Creating a safe place that celebrates asking questions, because the only way you get to the right answer is by asking the right question. The only way that you really empower your team with the correct information is through empowering your team members to be willing to seek out and pursue clarity and transparency without hesitation. And you'd be surprised at how many places I speak, Bruce, and I ask, okay, how many of you adults, so we're talking, 30 to 50, how many of you adults struggle to still raise your hand or assert a question into a meeting? And I'm talking 50, 75%, right? It's an insecurity that's a part of our human condition. But if we can create a culture where there is no foolish question, every question is celebrated because we know that that's the way in which to find the answers that are needed in order to succeed. Now you're beginning to practice a culture of questioning that is going to improve the organization. And so just another example of how you can turn every one of those foundations into an actual culture system and practice it.
I love that, creating that culture to be able to ask questions. I would agree with you 100%, because I've been in some different staff meetings where it felt like the culture was, hey, let's not share more than what the leader wants to hear. And it was just, it really stifled the growth of that team. Hey, well, let's talk about it. I mean, here we are, Champions Creed, blueprint of a Super Bowl culture. You're going to talk about this at the HR Southwest. I would love for you to share maybe, I don't know, maybe what's a couple of things that, for the listeners that are thinking about coming to your session, what's a couple of things that you're going to share as well? You've shared some good stuff so far.
Well, so the word creed is very important here.
Okay.
Because a creed is defined as a set of beliefs that guide the behaviors and actions of people. And it doesn't say a set of values. It doesn't say a set of priorities. It doesn't say a set of ideas. It says a set of beliefs. Why is that important? Recently, I learned from a friend and neuroscientist that we know where the brain stores values. But what was important about learning this is that she said, what holds the value in place is that it's surrounded by belief. the place that we store beliefs physiologically in the brain surround and hold in place the value. So when you're a company that writes a value statement and says, we value integrity. Integrity means doing the right thing when no one is watching. That's really cool. But the only thing that holds that in place, the only thing that makes that meaningful is what you believe about it. Right? And that's the key. The key is to take what you believe and actually turn that into a program and process by which to practice the how of culture. Right? Because we define culture is what you believe, why you believe it, and how you behave it. Right? And really across all organizational development and psychology, and even learning this from my mentor, Tony Bridwell, who's a friend of both of us, is that I think it's pretty commonly accepted that the foundation of all organizational culture includes non-negotiable beliefs and values. Right? So if that's true, what an awesome opportunity for us to create systems around how to practice our non-negotiable beliefs in order to get the expected behaviors, the hoped for behaviors out of our team members. And so really it starts there. So when we talk about the champion's creed, the champion being the person that outcompetes everybody, but does it according to a set of beliefs, an objective set of beliefs that they can practice within themselves and within their teams to improve the human condition at work. And really to look at culture that way, right? My favorite acronym for system is save yourself time, energy, and money. And guess what? That is widely accepted when it comes to strategic planning in a company, because we understand in order to be successful in any strategy, we have to have systems to carry out operationally. Why don't we take that approach to the human condition? Right? Because if you think about it, and if you pause for concepts like integrity, courage, empathy, grace, humility, I mean, the list goes on and on. Every single one of those non-negotiables has an objective quality that you can build a system of training around if you're willing to be that intentional about it. So now it's not just something on your website. It's not just a mission, vision, value statement. It's a mission, vision, belief system created, right, materialized, turned into an onboarding training program designed to actually pour into the human condition. We're not just going to talk about integrity. We're actually going to develop that in your and collectively as a team. And I submit if we go that far, we actually begin to have the impact culturally in our organizations that we desire.
I love all of this. This is fantastic. I was actually thinking about on our walls, instead of it saying our values, it just should say our beliefs,
Right.
because this is really what we believe whenever we are talking about different things that are important to us. When you talk about integrity, I do want to ask you this one question. And of course, I'll give you a few questions before we started, but as we're talking about this, I'm sitting here thinking, well, that's great, but there are some organizations, and I've heard different people talk about how they have their values on the wall, but when it came time to making decisions around money,
right,
resources, it wasn't necessarily we're doing the right thing. We're just going to do this thing this time, and then we'll go back to that later. How do you get people? I guess my question is probably going to be around, how do you get people to believe? Like, I don't know, how do you, someone that's going to attend your session, they're going to go back to the workplace, they're going to be fired up, ready to go. Now, all of a sudden, they need to get people to believe. How do they create that? Let's call it momentum, I guess, if you will. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, listen, it starts with commitment and it ends, but it's fostered in action. It doesn't, I don't think of any leader, Bruce, in your life that has had the greatest impact on your life. Chances are the reason why you follow that individual is because of the way in which they live their life. It's the actions that you see, it's the behaviors that you see consistently out of them that cause you to have faith in that person, to believe in that ideal, that quality that they carry with them. And that's true here as well. Like culture's not easy.
Mm.
Straight up. It's not easy. But you know what? It's also not as hard as people say that it is. It's not as elusive as people say that it is. But it does take energy, and it takes commitment, and it takes precision. And so I would say that if you really want to get believers, then you've got to go beyond just the statements. You've got to go beyond just the anecdotes into actually practicing, creating the systems around that in order to improve people. For example, we're working with a national construction brand recently, and one of the ways in which we delivered this and were able to really garner commitment was we were the first to go beyond talking about it and actually build and distribute leadership development programming across the entire organization for all the managers. So we're not just going to talk about the importance of leadership anymore. We're actually going to do something about it. And we're actually going to build a process by which you can go through a behavioral assessment platform. Then you're followed up with an executive leadership coach who's able to walk you through a strategic plan to help you as a leader manage your people better and reach your own individual goals. So now you take an idea and you turn it into a commitment, right? The investment side, the capital side is important because you have to have a senior leadership team who's willing to say, you know what, I'm going to invest the money that it's going to cost in order to coach and develop all of our leaders. And this company said yes to that. And so we were then able to, create that executive coaching platform, and now we're doing it. And it's beginning to make an impact on people's lives. So you have to follow up. You have to behave in a manner that proves to people that you're the real deal.
That's fantastic. Commitment, action. Yeah, I actually, for those who are listening, actually, we had Tony Bridwell. You mentioned Tony Bridwell. Tony was part of season 1. You can go back and listen to his show as well. He's a phenomenal leader as well. Hey, let me ask you this. I mean, you've given some good tips. You're going to talk about, what's it look like from the locker room of a champion, which I just love that. People are going to be excited to be part of that. But I always like to ask my guests when they get finished speaking, and you've delivered, you're going to deliver this hour and a half, whatever your time slot is. You finish delivering. What are you hoping for that people will come up to you? What are some things you would like for them to? You're hoping that they will say and that they will take away from that?
Well, it's a great question. Well, let me honor Tony Bridwell in that answer, because Tony taught me about a powerful system in which to be transformative as a speaker, and that really follows a model. And the model is inspire, teach, coach, inspire. It's understanding that the transformative, the change exists within the story. You have to be able to tell a story. The story is what has the greatest chance at changing an individual's and a team's mindset, right? The goal is to not be conformative in language, which is do it this way or you're not going to be here, right? That's an old school way of coaching. The new way is a transformative approach. How do we use the power of the Simon Sinek why, the story, to change a mindset? Once we change the mindset of an individual, now we've actually changed the heartbeat of an individual, and they then will give you more commitment and loyalty towards the behaviors that you ultimately want to, get their potential on, right? So I do think, for me personally, I think the excitement and the blessing around a special opportunity like being a part of this event is the inspirational side of it. I want HR leaders to walk out feeling empowered because they have to deal with this every single day. Listen, I'm the biggest champion for HR. HR to me is the most important group of people in any organization because they represent the people. They are the ones who are the facilitators and the advocates for the human condition. So, these are the individuals that I hope can walk away from the time that we have together, inspired by maybe a unique approach of how this works at a professional championship sports level, but all of the tremendous crossover that exists within business, right? And now the fact that I've been a practitioner in HR, in serious organizations, hopefully can show them that you can apply it and it will create impact. It does work. And so hopefully I look forward to it. I hope that I can build a lot of meaningful relationships out of this with people and friendships and be a help.
I love that because I hear you saying, hey, there's some principles, but there's also some practices. And as you're aligning all of these practices and building every day, right, brick by brick, you're telling stories.
Listen, you just said it, man. Like, the practices thing is the difference maker. So let me give you one example that doesn't cross over into corporate America.
Okay.
So much does. What doesn't is that in professional sports, let's just take football because that was what I played.
Okay.
In football, we practice 98% of the time to perform 2% of the time.
Okay.
So we start meetings at 6 a.m. in the morning. We end our day at 6 p.m. We do that Monday through Saturday. And then we go play for 3 hours on Sunday. But guess what? That's divided by offense and defense. So the average amount of play time for an offense is maybe 30 to 45 minutes, on average of 65 plays a game. Think about the amount of time that we spend every week practicing fundamentals, techniques, strategy, everything you can think of to be successful in the game. And then we only go and play for 45 minutes. And that's if you're a starter. If you're not a starter, you're playing half of that.
Right.
Okay. But in corporate America, we perform 98% of the time. And maybe we get 2% of organizational development practice over the course of a year. Right? Maybe we're one of the luckies that gets some executive coaching, or maybe we're one of the few that gets to go to different leadership conferences or whatever that may be. We don't have the platform to practice, these types of non-negotiables to improve the human condition because we have to perform. And we walk into the organization, right? And so there's something that's really powerful in that, because if companies are willing to commit to being innovative around how do we begin to practice more on the non-negotiable belief principles that we want to develop in our people, that practice over time is going to have an impact on performance, right? And it's going to become a powerful marketing tool in talent acquisition. Because when you become the company that cares more about its people than anybody else, people want to work for you, right? And that increases retention, right? It decreases turnover, which is radically expensive for the organization. And that's ultimately, one of the ways that we choose to look at, the importance of practicing.
I love that. So I'm thinking that whenever you're talking to different companies, you're trying to figure out a way to build in some practice, right? And maybe those practices are once a month or once a quarter. We're going to come in and we're going to meet together as a team and do certain things, but we're going to create some type of cadence to where we're practicing more, right?
Yes. Or it even happens daily. So a great industry to look at that does this well is nursing.
Okay. So
nursing, believe it or not, nurses already have what they call huddles.
Okay.
And 2 or 3 times during a shift, they will create a 3 to 5 minute opportunity to huddle as a team. Come together to huddle, just like an NFL football team would huddle. And then go around the players within the huddle, go around the nursing staff within the huddle, and communicate what's happening on the floor. And who prioritizing needs, understanding growth insights, how to help each other, right? Communicating. So they're already choosing, 2 to 3 times during their shift, how to spend just a moment in practice, developing and supporting each other. And it doesn't have to take much. I think sometimes leaders think that you have to go from 5% of practice to 100% of practice. Well, we just don't have the time for that. That's true. So how do you just make, even if you turn the dial even if you improved, leadership development by 5%, 5 to 10%, what is the waterfall effect of that throughout the organization? It doesn't have to be this massive undertaking. It can happen in small, precise, intentional increments designed to create ripple effects. And when those ripples hit other people, then those other people create more ripples. And it's the mentorship model that happens in the organization. So it's a cool thing to see.
This is fantastic. I am loving all of this. I guarantee you there's people right now, they're making notes in their journal. And right now I just wrote down huddles, right? Let's start creating some huddles. Let's start. And it's like anything else, right? You just start, right? It's not like you have to go start big. And I think you're right, Ben. You talked about, we think in our mindset that it's got to be, okay, well, let's have this half a day, session. No, you can just do, if you can create that cadence, you can do it daily and just do 3 to 5 minutes. It can probably make big impact, right?
Yes, one play at a time, right?
I love it.
One huddle at a time. And over time, it compounds and it begins to make a difference.
This is going to be so good. Ben Utech, he's coming to the HR Southwest Conference, October the 15th through the 18th in Fort Worth, Texas. You've got to register. I'll put the link in the show notes. You're going to love this. Hey, I do like to ask a question around advice from different guests that I interview on the show. And have you ever been given some advice? It was just like, it was so good. You just find yourself sharing that with others.
I had a chance recently to spend some time with John Maxwell and his team. John Maxwell Leadership, global leadership brand.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, it's like every sentence that comes out of his mouth is a journal note. I mean, it's like that, But and some of it is some of it, Bruce, is just so it's just so fundamental. For example, leadership is influence.
Right.
When you come into an understanding that the way in which you lead is always going to have an influence, so now it empowers you to be in control of that influence. How do you want your leadership style to influence your people? And it can influence them in a healthy direction, or it can influence them in a toxic direction. And take ownership of that. It's powerful. Another thing that I thought was really cool is that the fortune is in the follow-up.
Fortune's in the follow-up.
Yeah, this last year, that's become one that I've written down and reminded myself a number of times is to be courageous in the pursuit. Whatever the pursuit is that you're wanting to achieve, don't let insecurity or fear stand in the way of you reaching that goal, right? So the fortune is in the follow-up, and if you have to follow up a number of times in order to get, or in order to move forward on a strategy, then go for it, because the follow-up is key. We're all very busy people, and it's so easy to even commit to things at times that we forget about, right? So, if you've set a strategy in order to reach a goal, pursue that, follow up on that, and keep going until the answer is yes or the door is closed.
I love that. That is so fantastic. I wrote down courageous in the pursuit because I think about, you mentioned earlier that, you talked about why we do things is so important. And it goes back to, the bigger the why, the easier the how. Right. Yeah. So if you got a big why, man, you just got to be courageous in that pursuit and just go after it. I love that. This is so fantastic. I guarantee you, I could, man, I've got 3 pages of questions here. I could be talking to you all day long, but I want to shift to it's time to accelerate. But before I do want to ask you, because when I wrote down the word huddles, I thought to myself, I wonder if Ben's got any stories of Peyton Manning in the huddle. I just want to hear one.
Well, I don't want to give away too much because I actually I'll do a whole section on the culture of our huddle.
That's great.
But Peyton, I will say this, one of the things that I took away from my time with Peyton Manning was to always be a student of the game.
Mm,
Peyton was committed to out preparing everyone.
mm,
Right. And it kind of goes to that Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours to be an expert, right? When you think about that, what does it actually take to be the best? Right. So
mm.
1% of all Division I football players makes it to the NFL.
Okay.
3% of the 1% are lucky enough to win a Super Bowl. And then beyond that, of the 3%, how many are lucky to win an MVP? Of the MVPs, how many are the ones that make it into the Hall of Fame?
Mm,
So when you look at guys like Peyton, who truly are the best at what they do in the world, what is the difference maker? What sets them apart? And for Peyton, it was to never stop being a student of the game. Never, ever, ever stop learning. And have the humility to learn from everyone. Right? We talk about following behaviors. I saw him be confronted with on the field truths from rookies and him listening intently to what the rookie was saying and
mm.
learning from what the rookie was saying, and then going out and behaving differently because of what he learned from the rookie. And so he had a humility that didn't stand in the way of him learning from everyone at all times in order to have the greatest chance at winning. And that's something we can really learn in business. If you really care about what the company is trying to do, then learning comes out of the entire community. And how do
Mm.
we listen better? And how do we learn better from each other? How do we collaborate better in order to reach our goals? That was a pretty powerful lesson for me to see Peyton Manning.
That's great. That's gold. That's gold, Ben. I just absolutely, I have chills as you share that because I'm right there with you. It reminds me of when I was a young leader and I was sitting around the boardroom. I was the young guy and I had all the old guys around the boardroom, and we'd go around and we'd talk about different things in the organization. And when it came to me, I didn't really want to share much because I wanted to learn from the older guys, right? The experienced guys.
Yes.
Well, now I'm the older guy.
Right.
And we have all these young men and women in the boardroom, and I want to hear from them.
Yeah.
And so that's such a great story. I love that. Hey, I want to shift to it's time to accelerate. You've been to a lot of cities. You played some ball in a lot of cities. You're speaking now. What's your favorite city to visit?
Oh my gosh. Oh man. I would probably okay. So when I retired, I moved to Nashville. We lived in Franklin, Tennessee for a few years before coming back to Minnesota. And there's just something about Nashville. There's something about being in that state that is just, we love it there. So I would, it's kind
That's
of the
awesome.
combination of you get that entertainment world, right? You get some of that ultra creativity, but then you also have this really foundation of values and tradition and chivalry, and yeah, I loved everything about kind of the melting pot of Nashville, Tennessee.
I love that. That's fantastic. Hey, what about the coming to the HR Southwest conference in Fort Worth, Texas? What are you looking forward to most?
Well, I'm super excited that my mentor Tony Birdwell is the MC of the event.
Yeah,
So
he's fantastic.
I'm excited to be involved in something with him finally for the first time. But honestly, if I'm being completely vulnerable, and I this is one of the things I talk about as a speaker, is that vulnerability equals connectivity, right? It's
Mm,
which is tough. It's tough for people because
yeah.
to be vulnerable, you're opening yourself up to being emotionally wounded. And so um, this path that I've been on, in some ways, Bruce, has been challenging because I get generalized pretty easily being a former athlete, and so within the last couple of years, being invited into a C-suite and really becoming a practitioner of culture has really finally given me some credibility to where I'm not just a motivationalist athlete, but I'm actually a serious executive leader that's taking this and actually implementing it, integrating it, and practicing it, and it's working. And so I would say that I'm really excited. This will be one of the first times I've had a chance to be welcomed into the HR community to share something that's really passionate for my own personal life, but that I'm also doing within human resources to impact people. And so this is a big deal for me, and I'm super humbled by it.
It's awesome.
I have the utmost respect for these professionals. And so to be welcomed in to share my story is a huge honor for me.
As you're sharing that, I know you're a John Maxwell fan. I was thinking about the time John Maxwell said he started out, he was going doing some speaking, and they called him a motivational speaker. And he decided after a year he didn't want to be a motivational speaker. You want to be a motivational teacher.
Ooh, yeah.
And I just like, it just like, that just stuck. And I was like, that's what I want. I do want to motivate, but I want to teach. I don't, and so that's fantastic. I love this. This has been such a fun conversation. Hey, this is my last question, final question. One of my favorite questions I like to ask. Ben, 10 years older. He's around the corner. He's knocking at your door. You're going to go into that door. What's he going to tell you?
Oh man, save up sooner for the weddings that you have with 4 daughters. That's going to be.
I love it.
Oh gosh. He's probably going to say, spend more time with the people you love the most. Probably. I think that, you don't get to the top in anything without hard work, and that work is time. And so I think that there are times when I feel like my pursuit for influence and success can sometimes cause me to choose that over my family and over my friends, right? That drive, that competitiveness. And I don't think it's nearly as important. I don't even think it's in the same category. So I would say that person 10 years from now is going to say, you know what? If you could do it all over again, make sure that you continue to keep the people that you love the most as priority number 1 in your life. And so I'm trying to do that now, but that's
fantastic.
Which is why I say that, because I think it's real, and I think a lot of executives struggle with the same thing.
Well, that's a wise 10 years older Ben Utecht. Hey, I am so honored to have you on my show to talk about your topic coming up at the HR Southwest. And you're going to be talking about Champions Creed, Blueprint of a Superbowl Culture, coming to Fort Worth, Texas, October the 15th through the 18th. I'll put the link in the show notes. Hey, what if somebody they heard something today and they wanted to connect with you? How would be the best way to connect?
So I use LinkedIn like email. So please, find my kind of my professional brand on LinkedIn and just reach out. That would be awesome. And you'll be able to see kind of all the stuff that I'm doing involved there. You can also connect with me through Behavioral Essentials, which is our technology and assessment company, because I spend a lot of time there. It was kind of the icing on the cake for me, Bruce, because it actually brought a scientific methodology behind everything that I've been speaking about and doing inspirationally and executively. So it's all kind of coming together in those platforms. But please, reach out. I'm super accessible, so I'll respond on LinkedIn, and then we can get connected personally.
That's perfect. And I'll put the link in the show notes, and be sure and let Ben know you heard him on Life in the Leadership Lane, and that makes that connection so much quicker. And so super excited about that. I'm super excited about you coming to the HR Southwest conference. I can't wait to see you in person and be part of your session. And I know people listening, they're all probably right now going, man, I got to get to that session. So thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you.
And I do the whole session in full pads.
That's fantastic. Oh, that would be great. Oh my goodness. Well, I appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to see you.
Sounds good.
All right. Talk to you later.
Thank you.